Well, Patrick, I hate to start here, but it's just right. It's just low-hanging fruit. It's an easy mark right now. COVID's kind of changed a lot of things for dealers. I think we all thought that the big disruption was going to come from, say, a Carvana, but in reality, it came from a pandemic, and it's forced dealers to make some changes and adjustments. What are some of the observations you've seen that have changed in the dealership operations since COVID? And maybe we can follow that up with, what are some dealers doing to thrive right now?
That's a really great question, Bart, and certainly one that's been a moving target through the year as we redefine how we do business and we level set against what customers expect of us as an industry, and I think more importantly, what they expect going forward beyond COVID, right? So if you think about 2020, there have been a lot of things that have happened to impact both the sales and service side of the business, but I'll talk about service for a minute. We've always had a challenge as an industry to drive service retention through the ownership life cycle. And, if you think about loyalty at year one, that sits about 65%. And by the time you get to year 6, we're down to 20%. It's always been a really challenging environment to get customers coming back, right? One of the good things that we've seen through COVID is that a lot of dealers have introduced touch-free service experiences. And that offer is really resonating with our consumers. And pardon me, at the end of the day, what it's doing is it's pulling out some really new, interesting insights on what the impact is to our customers. First and foremost, 94% of the customers we surveyed are completely satisfied with the service experience when there's a touchless experience available to them. And the most staggering stat for me is that 70% of touchless customers have vehicles that are 6 years old or older. So if you think about offering convenience and that added element to a consumer and doing business on their terms, it's actually stretching our relationships beyond the traditional warranty years and helping us more effectively compete with the aftermarket, who are, quite frankly, less sophisticated and don't drive those same options. So while it's super challenging and people are driving less and maybe aren't requiring as many visits, there's a light here that says the experience is positive, customers want to leverage it and are willing to pay a premium for that service, and more importantly, are keeping the relationship going downstream.
Yeah, I think the last 2 points of that to me make, when you're talking about touchless service, the first thing I keep thinking about is, well, it's going to cost more. It's going to cost more to facilitate that from an operational standpoint. But you're saying that customers are willing to pay more for that if they don't have to drive down to, the local Jiffy Lube or whatever and get that done?
There's two things that happen, Bart. So we've got examples where people or dealers will charge a premium for the service, and customers are willing to pay that extra charge. But more importantly, we're seeing it on the RO. RO values are significantly higher when you offer the service, and customers are much more willing to add additional lines to the RO for required services than when they sit at the store waiting for their car and they're anxious to leave the facility. So that convenience, the comfort of being in their office or at home really is loosening the wallets, and customers are spending more per RO.
So let's kind of continue that for a second. What does it, if we look at the service, the fixed operations side of the business, what does it entail to be able to do this? My first thought comes to those service advisors. They work harder than anybody, and typically where the service experience can break down if you don't have a waiter is the follow-up, right? So now you've got these cars coming from everywhere, and there's a little bit maybe more infrastructure involved. How does it change the way that the store operates?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you really got to lean into the technology and the solutions that are available to you to streamline the process for a couple of reasons. One, you need to deliver the experience consistently across your customer base, and it can't just be ad hoc and variable by advisor touch point, right? So if you think about the service lane technology that's available today, we've just introduced a transport solution within our service lane technology that creates that complete touchless alternative to consumers, but also gives the dealer to choose the model that suits them the best. So if you think about touchless, a lot of people have experimented with different models, but you've got to give the dealer the option, the flexibility to say, does that mean it's vehicle pickup and delivery? Is it customer pickup and delivery through intermediaries? And from a staffing perspective, do they want a fully staffed model that's outsourced, or do they want the software and technology that allows them to leverage their own people to execute on those services? And then if you think about the rest of the story in leveraging technology, if you think about everything from scheduling and the communication stream, you have to have a really integrated approach that has sophisticated predictive modeling built in, leveraging AI where possible so that you're delivering the right message to the right consumer at the right time, and then giving them the tools at their leisure to be able to look at shop capacity, book their vehicle in for service, and when the service advisor interacts, have a check-in process, a vehicle walk-around process, and an ability through text, email, video, seek out upsell opportunities as they present themselves. So I think it's really enabling our advisors with the same tools and technology that consumers are using to engage with.
So let's kind of pivot a little bit and talk about this lifetime marketing. What are you finding is resonating today with consumers in that life cycle that's keeping them attached or tied back to the store they bought the car from?
Yeah, so if you think about the touch points, when we at Affinitiv look at the life cycle of the customer journey, there's a few really critical touch points, right? There's the initial showroom I'll start with showroom to service. That's probably the first major intersection that will drive behaviors through the ownership life cycle, right? So that first appointment, the ability to generate the first appointment is going to be critical in how we build out our business. And to think about year one, today only 62% of new car buyers return for service in the first year of ownership. So 38% of customers aren't even coming back in year one, right? So the first critical path is to make sure that you're engaged, that you're speaking to customers in the medium of choice, of their choice, and you get that first appointment. That first appointment is critical because it gives you the opportunity to introduce the service department, but more importantly, then get into a regular cycle of communication that incorporates digital, social, traditional direct mail, and text, XMS, etc.
And so you've kind of mentioned the channel. What is the messaging? Is it just we're here? We're safe. What are your customers responding to today?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. First of all, the critical piece, Bart, is that you've got tailored communications that are relevant to that particular owner. So you've got your traditional service reminder programs that will be based on time and mileage and analytics based on historical driving patterns, so that you can really get to those consumers at the time of need. But more importantly, in today's world, you want to be able to incorporate telematics data, right? Find out what is the vehicle telling us that we can then respond to and reinforce with that consumer, and ultimately with OEM partnerships, deliver that messaging back to consumers in their vehicle, right? So it's real time, it's based on vehicle telematics data, and the engagement level when you get that personalized is certainly much higher. And then through the life cycle, if you think about that, there's different ways to keep the customers abreast of what you're doing. One thing that we're seeing dealers are jumping on in a big way in 2020 are the way that our personalized newsletters that look at driving content that's relevant to the local community, to the dealership, and to that consumer in their vehicle. And that's a great opportunity to talk about your COVID protocols, your sanitation protocols, and what you're doing to keep customers safe, and the options you have in terms of touchless experience. All those things combined really lend to a better customer experience at the end of the day, and increase the opportunity of not only getting the RO, but as I said earlier, upselling on the RO, as customers are not sitting waiting in a waiting room.
It seems like the what I'm going to call the connected car, but this telematic data that you get from the vehicle is a great third-party validation that a repair needs to be done versus an advisor going out and saying, hey, your oil filter, we need to replace your air filter. You've got the car telling you that this work needs to be done. Does that make sense?
That's exactly right. It's really an impartial source, and you're going to trust your car more than you're going to trust anybody trying to, quote unquote, sell you something. So it's a great source of data, and it has credibility built into it. And you could also leverage manufacturer data for things like recall, right? So if you think about recall, the communication methods have evolved significantly in the last 4 years, and there's significantly more opportunity to reach out to those consumers and bring them in to make sure that their vehicles are compliant, and that we perform all safety-related recalls. That's another touch point that has high credibility, keeps the relationship going, and again, at the end of the day, while you may choose or not choose to upsell around a recall, you're maintaining the relationship. And the key is not driving dollars per RO up on every visit, but driving the number of visits over the life cycle, so customers can build the trust, build the confidence in the store, build the relationship, and ultimately when they're back in market, it's much easier to get them back in the showroom from the service lane than it is to go conquest a new customer.
It's sad but true that we're talking about about a recall being a great customer retention tool, but it's true, right? I mean, yeah. It is a good time to get in front of those customers and have very relevant messaging.
Yeah, the studies show that a recall is not necessarily a negative trigger when it comes to customer satisfaction, right? If you handle it well and you're proactive, and it's a convenient experience, recalls can actually drive customer stat scores up.
I've got just a couple more questions, and both of them are kind of theoretical, and I apologize. But first of all, you've got customers that, they pay their bill every month, they're happy. Then you've got customers that are just reinventing and changing and growing like crazy the way that they're servicing vehicles. What are some of the behaviors that separate those two?
That's a really great question. Bart, I wish I had an easy answer, but I don't know that there is one, right? You think about how fast this industry is changing and the options that are made available to consumers today, from ownership options and shared ownership subscription models, evolving to more of a fleet model where customers really don't even get involved with the service process. You've got some major industry shifts that are occurring that could arguably disenfranchise consumers to the service experience, right? That doesn't mean you lose them. It means their focus is going to be on convenience and flipping cars and making sure that they've got the latest, greatest technology in the vehicle they choose. Ultimately, if you think about those two populations, while your approach might be slightly different, you just need to understand the long game. And I say long game, one of the things that we work really aggressively with OEMs and dealers on is the ability to bring in tools like equity mining and ultimately trade valuations. So you keep the customer connected to not only talking to them when they're likely to repurchase or be in market for a vehicle, but you give them the opportunity to value that trade and understand what their vehicle is worth. So in doing that, you create this environment where they're more attuned to the impacts of service, maintenance, and repairing vehicle damage as it relates to their ability to trade and then leverage the full value of that vehicle. So I don't know if that answers your question, Bart, but the engagement is critical. Keeping customers informed and giving them data Most of our customers, are spending most of their time online watching videos, getting product knowledge. 78% have connected TV. So you just have to leverage technology and open up that communication stream, educate them on the importance of maintaining their vehicles, and giving them the option to put their hand up and say, I'm in equity, I like the trade valuation, what can you do for me?
The last question I have would involve around, you've done some in the past few years. You've done quite a bit of you've done some acquisitions. Let's call it that way.
Sure.
And if you take a look at the mission of Affinitiv and kind of what these are all designed to drive, what would be that overarching umbrella that would say all of our products or services or acquisitions are around X?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I'm glad you asked, because quite frankly, I think part of the challenge we have at Affinitiv is that the market really hasn't necessarily kept up to the pace of our acquisitions and our strategy on where we're taking the business. And if you were to ask me what's new at Affinitiv in 2021, I would say everything is new at Affinitiv. And you look at the acquisition string that started in 2016, we've had a deliberate attempt to bring in best-in-class providers to ultimately bring a suite of marketing and service lane technologies together to create a marketing platform that's fully integrated from sales to service and service back to sales, right? So here we are now 5 years later, and you've got a fully integrated data-driven platform that leverages AI, sophisticated predictive modeling, and we're ready to meet and drive new experiences. So coming full circle, our mission is really simple. We want to drive the next generation customer experience, and we want to do that by partnering with our dealer and OEM customers to not only create experiences that are meaningful to our customers and our dealers' customers, our OEMs' customers, but to drive performance and efficiency and ultimately inspire loyalty. And our vision is really super simple. We want to create customers for life by reimagining experiences. So that means we need to create new experiences for our customers, dealers and OEMs, who in turn can create those guest experiences for their retail customers. So everything we do, Bart, is centered around customer experience and really driving innovation and how we handle that.
No, that's great. I think that's a good way to drop the mic, Patrick. Do you have anything else that you would like me to kind of key you up on?
I would just say, if you haven't checked us out, please come to affinitiv.com, look at our services. We're happy to engage and would love to talk about how we can help drive that customer experience for your store or for your OEM.